and you could hear us but more.
If we report that you're saying there are going to be 65,000 new jobs, you're going to say, well, we didn't really say new jobs.
That's correct.
We say new and supported. For people to say, boy, that really waters down the impact of what you're saying. What do we mean support? I don't.
Sure. A couple things, and this is actually from watching what's taken place in Pennsylvania, that there are people that are currently providing goods and services in the state in Ohio. This is a new market, and they're going to transition into that market. So take, for example, the legal industry. The legal industry has actually been pretty soft. I actually feel sorry for lawyers these days. And this is opening up a lot of legal work. Is that going to mean that there's going to be a raft of new hires? There'll probably be a raft of new paralegals, but that's going to be providing work to the law industry. The model shows there are going to be 1,000, catch this, 1,000 environmental compliance people as well as technicians out in the field because of this. Those are mostly going to be new jobs. Construction industry. There's going to be a transition. We've had construction in the state that's been supported by the federal stimulus the past few years. This is going to roll in. It's going to pick up the slack. We are in grave danger of looking at 66,000 new and supportive jobs and declaring a loss when it really is a victory. We aren't going to go about disentangling and say exactly how many are brand new. I believe, Iryna, how many did we see in personal services? 30? I forgot what the number is.
It's about 1/3 is going to be created in personal services of this city.
So personal services are restaurants, doctors, medical services. So when you look at that, that's broad-based through the eastern part of the state. A lot of that is going to be new employment. But just take a look at what was announced today by having a headquarters in Massillon. You set those 750 new jobs in Massillon, those aren't going to be new, are going to be supporting, by another multiplier factor, all the services that helps make for a healthy Ohioan as a result. And that's what the 65,000 job number is.
What assumption did you make with regard to the state energy standard? Would it stay in place under this model, or did it not make a difference?
I have to turn to the modelers. I think it stays the same, doesn't it?
Yeah,
if you could.
Yeah, all of us should be here so that let's do a huddle around the microphone so that Bill doesn't hear empty echoes.
I guess I'm not sure what standard you're talking about.
The requirement that the utility company.
This is the alternative and advanced fuel standard.
Yeah, there's no requirement under Senate Bill 221 that natural gas be used.
So it's not a factor at all.
Right, it is not a factor.
Doesn't matter if they change it or leave it the same.
No.
Okay. Just following up on that, so you're assuming though no tougher regulation of this kind of drilling. You're assuming the current rules for drilling will remain in place. You don't take into account there could be some tougher standards here that might.
That's correct. We did not.
And in fact, a change in the standard itself should not affect the outcome of the numbers at all, because it really is the same people are going to be doing the work just to a higher level. I'm assuming you're thinking in terms of the standards around the drilling and the well fields themselves. Yes.
So your point is then this study cannot be used by people who are going to say, who might say, now don't enact tougher standards because you're going to screw up these job numbers. Yeah. Your point is these same job numbers, no matter what the standards.
I think that the fairest and best way to say this, the honest way of saying this, is that we did not factor in a change in the standards in the model. So I can't answer that without actually doing a full modeling of it. But as an individual, I don't think it's going to make a difference. Now, if you put in draconian standards that increases the cost of drilling, increases uncertainty greatly, then it can.
How much did you review the other economic impact studies that have been done, and how different are the conclusions that might account for the different numbers we've seen put out there? Is it mostly on the downstream impact that you didn't account?
So we reviewed many.
You have to get closer to the one with the blue line.
We reviewed many studies. Majority of them were doing economic impact just for drilling. So we went a little bit further left and right, what was pre-drilling cost for roads and bridges and post-drilling infrastructure. We were about at the vicinity, a little bit more conservative in the number of return on investment, which is kind of studies look each other and compare themselves to. So average studies in the vicinity of 1.65, we were at the vicinity of 1.33, 32. So, but where we factored in our conservative assumptions, it's how much money gonna go in. So we said at least this amount will go in from drilling and midstream infrastructure. But there will be not many jobs in a midstream infrastructure if this assumption would not hold.
Most of the jobs in the midstream actually takes place through the construction of the facilities. Once the facilities are up and going, it's mostly maintenance. These are very capital-intensive industries. So once you do midstream, the employment effects aren't as large. The construction impacts are quite large.
Can I add one thing? As has been indicated here this morning, this is a very rapidly developing industry. A year ago, people were talking about Marcellus development in Ohio, which at the end of the day will probably be confined to the easternmost counties in this state, Jefferson, Monroe, and so forth. What became clear only as 2011 went on, and really not much before the middle of the year, was the importance of the Utica, this alternative shale play in this state. I think that has to be kept in mind. So this is a quickly moving target, this industry and its eventual impacts. And other studies that, even if they came out just a few months ago, we have the benefit of doing our analysis based on better information and so forth. That said, I don't see any fundamental contradiction between our findings and some of the other investigators in this area.
You mentioned road construction and environmental compliance. I hear in that government. Did you split out government versus private investment in terms of what would be necessary to bring this kind of result?
We assumed this was entirely private investment in our analysis.
So all the environmental compliance jobs are private
Yes.
as well?
That's
Okay.
correct. Complying with regs.
Right. And when it comes to the road, with each pad, there's an assumption of public roads being repaired and strengthened, one bridge per pad, and added culvert work, and that's on the side of the private investor. See, there was a comment back in here. Oh, Jeff, you aren't part of the press. You're going to have to wait.
Fair enough. The study only goes ahead 2 years, and I'm wondering, is there any kind of projection for how long, when somebody mentioned, I think, a decline curve, basically how long until production starts declining and there's no longer any kind of...
Well, there's sort of two different questions you have there. One relates to the decline curves in a particular well. Shale hydrocarbons decline rapidly compared to other gas and oil wells. That nonetheless, if you look at anybody who projects ultimate recovery, they typically project it out 20 to 30 years. So these wells will produce for probably 20 to 30 years, although they may go back in and refracture at some point. The different question, I think, relates to how long is this drilling going to go on? And the short answer to that is that there aren't enough rigs for us to go out and drill everything that you would want to drill right now. The millions of acres that are held by companies, they can't get to them all. And each one of these wells takes up to 6 months to drill. So it's a labor-intensive and capital-intensive industry that's going to probably be here for another 20 to 30 years, drilling at this rate of 1,000 wells plus a year, so long as prices are able to support that type of activity.
Another thing I've heard is that